All right, so for the last section of Unit 1, we're going to talk about inverses. Now, there is a slideshow on the page right now that has the steps for inverses, so if you want to take those notes down, make sure you get those as well. But I'm going to start jumping into some problems here. So we're going to start off with the function f of x is equal to 2x plus 5. And we want to find the inverse to this function. So if you look back at your notes or that slideshow, the first thing we want to do is change that y, or that function notation into a y. Second step is to swap x and y. So this now becomes an x, 2y plus 5. And now we want to solve for y. That's our third step there. So we're going to subtract the 5, get that away from the y. So we have x minus 5 equals 2y. And then we want to divide everything by 2, so we get y by itself. So y equals x minus 5 over 2. And the final step for finding an inverse is using that inverse notation. So in this case, we have f inverse of x is equal to x minus 5 over 2. So again, we started with our original equation, and we wanted to find the inverse of it. So we made sure we swapped x and y, and then solved for y. We'll do this. Okay, for our second example, we're going to use the function g of x is equal to x minus 3 quantity squared plus 1, and we're going to find the inverse of this function. So the first thing we want to do is change that function notation into a y, and then rewrite our equation. Next thing we'll do is swap x and y. Those are going to trade places because the inverse means that the x's and the y's have traded places, or that domain and range are swapping. So we've got x is equal to y minus 3 squared plus 1. And last but not least, we need to make sure that we're solving for y now. So I'm going to take this 1, get it away from that y by subtracting it. So x minus 1 equals y minus 3 quantity squared. Then to undo the squared term, we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we'll square root both sides. Then the square root of x minus 1 is equal to y minus 3. And then I need to get that y by itself still, so I'm going to add that 3 over. Get the square root of x minus 1 plus 3 is equal to y. And then final step here is to use that inverse notation. So g inverse of x is equal to the square root of x minus 1 plus 3. And so you can do this for any function. If you have a squared term, the inverse would be a square root. If you have a cubed term, then the inverse would be a cube root. Inverse of a log is exponential. So you would use inverse operations to be able to get that inverse function.